welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Turn the Page podcast. I'm Katherine, your friendly neighborhood reference librarian, and today I'm here with Rebecca Thorne, author of the upcoming cozy sci-fi novel, Lost in Space. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I'm genuinely so excited.
I'm so excited too. It's a theme that keeps popping up as I read these books for the purpose of doing this podcast interview, and then the problem is I have no one to talk to about it because the book's not out yet.
Yeah, I've been surprised at how many advanced reader copies we've been sending out. I asked my publisher back in February to do like a really big advanced reader copy campaign, basically, where I was like, let's get as many copies out there as we can. And it was really interesting because they're traditional, and I started as an indie author. So for indies, we're like, oh, as many as we can. If we can hit 1,000 arcs, that'd be great. That helps the book succeed. And traditional publishers are like, well, we don't want to give away that many copies for free. So like we had to kind of have like a discussion about like, well, what's the truth in the data? If people read an arc, do they go out then and buy the book? And I ran a survey and like with my arc campaign that they let me do. And the answer with like 1,500 participants was overwhelmingly that like 90% of them will go and buy a copy of the book if they like the arc. And we have seen that pretty true, I think, in the last couple of weeks as like people are talking more about Lost in Space. It's just been cool to see,
Yeah, well, that's how I found out about the book, was that one of the librarians here at Syosset Public Library, they received an ARC and they were like, I think you might like this. Do you want to take a look? I looked at the back cover. I'm like, you need to tell me who I need to talk to so that I can do this interview because this looks amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Well, we're finally here. We're able to have this discussion. But before we dive in, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about you and a little bit about Lost in Space?
Yeah, so my name is Rebecca Thorne. I'm a USA Today bestselling author, Sunday Times and indie bestselling. Most people know me for the Cozy Fantasy Tomes and Tea series. It is a quartet with 4 books that starts with a book called Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. And that book is definitely my most popular. I do have another series out with the first book titled This Gilded Abyss. That one is not cozy. It's more of a thriller. Yeah, don't recommend it if you're looking for cozy vibes. But this is kind of a return for me into the cozy sphere. So Lost in Space is, to my knowledge, the first book being marketed as a cozy sci-fi. I do think that there are other books that can fit into the cozy sci-fi genre pretty well, but very few of them, if you actually start to list them. Like it's pretty much like Becky Chambers, maybe Martha Wells, and like maybe like Automated Noodle. And I think that like there's really not very much out there right now as far as like cozy sci-fi goes. So my intent with this book was to write a book that could be marketed as cozy sci-fi to show the publishing industry that this is a genre people actually want. So please go buy more books in this genre, right? Like publishing likes to buy what works. So, now that we see success with Dungeon Crawler Carl, people are picking up Lit RPG. When we saw success with Legends and Lattes, people picked up cozy fantasy. So my hope is that with Lost in Space, people will read this book, love this book, talk about this book, and then we might start to see more cozy sci-fis hitting the shelves in the coming years, which would be really cool. Lost in Space as a book is about a girl named Torian Rasner, who is an ex-smuggler trying to save her sister from breathing the recycled air on the space station. She has a condition where she can't process the recycled air very well. And so Torian goes and buys a starship covered in moss to try and save her sister by getting her off the space station. But when she gets inside the starship, she actually learns that the moss covering the starship is both sentient, responsible for life support, and has severe abandonment issues. So it was left in a hangar on a human, space station for 100 years, and it's very upset about that. And so when Torian comes in, they kind of form an unlikely friendship as they learn how to basically reconcile with their own problems.
It's such a good book. The concept of the book intrigued me. Obviously, we're here. But typically I'm not one to pick up sci-fi. Every now and again, I'll pick up sci-fi, give it a taste, and either go, oh, that was nice. I'll keep that in the back of my mind, or I go, still not for me. This was lovely. It like just across the board, it was so nice. It was like hopeful as you're reading it, and it coziness vibes were to the max, which was fantastic. And you did mention that you have written other series before, which you already said this. This Gilded Abyss, not cozy.
Not cozy.
Highly recommend it, not cozy.
Yeah. Definitely read the content warnings and take them seriously because that book is a ride. And the
Yes.
sequel is coming out in December, this Crimson Ruin, and it's going to be even worse.
Yes, we love to hear it. So, because you've written cozy fantasy before and you've written not cozy sci-fi, I wanted to know what do you think the difference is between writing cozy fantasy and cozy sci-fi? And then while you were writing cozy sci-fi, were there like different self-imposed rules that you wanted to follow to achieve the setting you were looking for?
So I think with cozy sci-fi, one of the things that I really love about the cozy genre in general, as we've watched it kind of be shaped with Legends and Lattes and all of the subsequent titles that have followed, is that it feels like fantasy light to me. I notice that I get a lot of readers who tell me outright that they are not fantasy readers. They do not like fantasy books. They have never gotten into a fantasy story, but they loved my books. And I think that that is a pretty good indicator that cozy fantasy is meant to be using general conventions that people typically understand without making it such a complicated fantasy world that it feels like a barrier to entry for a lot of these people. So I think that when I was writing the cozy sci-fi, I was keeping that in the back of my mind. Like a lot of people don't like reading sci-fi because it gets very technology heavy, right? Like it's not magic, it's technology. And how do you write about the vacuum of space and all the science around the vacuum of space without overwhelming the reader with that science? So I think that cozy sci-fi, another big reason that I really want to see it on shelves is because I actually do think it might be a really good introduction genre to sci-fi books in general. So I'm a big sci-fi fan. I have read it all my life. My dad is an aerospace engineer. My wife is an aerospace engineer. Yeah, like space has kind of been in my family for years, and so sci-fi to me is like such a wonderful place to be, and it makes me sad that a lot of people see it and genuinely are not interested in it. And I think that this is a really good genre to kind of break that convention. So I think that was a big reason when I was like writing this, the differences between it was like, okay, like let's not dive too much into the technology. Let's not focus too much on the science of space. Let's focus more on the relationships and the characters and their development rather than all of these things that are typical in a space opera. Because maybe then we can get some people involved who understand cozy fantasy. Now all of a sudden they're reading cozy sci-fi, they're liking it, and we might be able to pull them into the genre from there. What was the second part of that question? Because I definitely forgot.
No worries. The second part of the question was, did you have different self-imposed rules that you wanted to follow in order to achieve the setting you were looking for?
100%. So when I first came up with the idea for Austin Space, so yes, when I was writing cozy sci-fi, I definitely had an idea in mind for a lot of these like different conventions, I suppose. I definitely went on TikTok years ago, like 2022 or 2023, and I said, if I was going to write a cozy sci-fi, what would you want this book to look like? What do you want in it? And people listed tropes, and the overwhelming one that they really wanted to see was hope and solar punk. So like the hopeful solar punk plants in space vibes. They really wanted to see plants in space. And I was like, well, that's easy because I love plants. Like I have plants all over my office. So to me, it was not that hard. And then I read The Spell Shop, and that was kind of like the moment that I was like, oh, sentient plants, right? Like I read Kaz in The Spell Shop and Meep, and I was like, yes, sentient plants, right? So I think that I was able to like combine a lot of those conventions that were basically listed in that TikTok. I was like, okay, let's take the hope punk, the solar punk, the like light science. They wanted some kind of cute animal companion. A lot of people mention cats, but I do feel like cats can be a little overdone in fiction. So I shifted it a little bit, and you'll meet that character at the end of book one. But they are a very large part in book two and three. So I was able to kind of add a lot of those things that make it feel familiar for cozy fantasy readers, but not so reminiscent of cozy fantasy. Like it still feels very fresh and new in the way that it is now sci-fi, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And the it's funny that you mentioned solar punk. I specifically, it was like this has such strong solar punk vibes where,
Perfect. I did it.
you did it. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. The award is in the mail.
Amazing. Amazing.
Solar punk, for listeners that don't know, is an optimistic environmentalist subgenre that envisions the future life on Earth to be transformed by like sustainable energy, close cohabitation of humans with nature, progressive socio-political values. And that's my definition from dictionary.com because I did want to talk about it.
I love that.
So we got there. But yeah, I think part of the reason why I loved this book so much is because it is hopeful. I find that like a lot of sci-fi books that you go into is very dystopian. And
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, love a good dystopian
Oh, same.
setting. So
Yeah, big
good.
mood. Hmm.
Uh, but life can be a little dystopian on its own, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just need a little bit of sunshine and a little bit of moss in a spaceship to make you
Yeah.
feel better about the world.
Right. Well, and I do think that the solar punk, the minute that they said that, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's definitely got to be the vibe for the first book marketed as cozy sci-fi, right? Like, I think that when you're thinking about cozy in space, like space is very cold, space is very dark, but you think about stories like Firefly, right? Like where it's very cozy, or like the TARDIS in Doctor Who, right? Like
Mhm.
they're somehow that massive interior, like phone booth is very cozy inside, and it's usually because there's a lot of warmer colors, and there's usually some kind of like there's cozy blankets, there's cozy armchairs, and in my opinion, there's plants. I think that that helps. Like it's the family that's inside the spaceship, but it's also like the vibe of the spaceship itself. Like they're worn, they're not sleek and technologically advanced, like if you think, I guess, even between like Star Wars, when you think of like the heroes versus the Sith, right? Like the Jedi versus the Sith, like the Jedi have more worn starships. Like the Republic's ships are worn. They're lived in, they're beat up, and then you see the Sith and they're clean and they're empty and they're cold, and I think that that is the kind of focus when it comes down to cozy sci-fi. Like you want to make sure that the ship feels cozy for the reader, because space is not cozy. Like space is very dangerous and dark and abysmal. Like it's just
Yeah.
sad, and it can be wondrous and beautiful, but you have to have like that cozy like location, I think, to really lock that genre in.
Yes. Well, the starship that they are on, not so cozy name is the Destitute.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's we're not going to
Moss.
go we're not going to go too far into details because I don't want to give it, too much away. But the name of this starship is currently the Destitute. So not so cozy name. The ship itself is incredibly cozy. You're right, it has like that worn feeling, but it's not like that hard metal. It's like wood paneling, and there's like
Yes.
different, it's not just moss. There's different plants inside, and they
Hmm.
have complaints about how
They
they're
have
being taken
opinions.
care of.
As a plant mom, I channeled a lot of my plants for that. So many complaints. Like you move a plant from one part of the windowsill to the other part of the windowsill and it starts to die. And you're like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah,
But like the light is ever so slightly different and the plant is not happy.
I know. My room is filled with plants, and you have like the ones that are like, if you touch me, if you so much as breathe in my direction,
Yeah.
you will rue the day. I'm like, come
If
on, I'm
you
trying my
if you
best.
water me wrong by just splashing a little bit of water on my leaves, then there will be brown spots on my leaves right where the water splashed last time. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, very temperamental.
Yeah, the pothos are my favorite. They're hardy.
See, I have trouble with pothos.
Really?
Yeah.
I have so many. I have like just like billions and billions of pothos.
No, I've tried pothos so many times. I currently have two, and like they are alive, which is shocking for me. Uh, but they're also like I feel like I'm on a cliff's edge with both of them, where at any moment they could turn on me and just wither away. Like I try so hard because like I love them. I want them
I'm
to
like
thrive.
they're genuinely beautiful plants. Like I think they're amazing, but maybe more light and potentially less water. I will say I don't water my pothos until they start to droop.
Yeah.
Luckily, they're also dramatic, so like I can tell immediately when they need watering because they're just like, and then I go in and I water them, and then the next day they're like, ah, like
Yes. That is my general my alarm bell for like my pothos, when the one that's like sitting. I have a like a silver velvet pothos. She's my pride and joy. My regular pothos is right next to her. And as soon as she starts to like droop, I'm like, okay, watering for everybody.
yes, yes.
She is the alarm bell.
She's the alarm bell. Yep, I have a couple plants like that too. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it has been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I my plants tend to thrive on neglect or they don't thrive. So
yeah, fair.
uh speaking of neglect, uh there is a character in your
Speaking of
book.
neglect, let's just dive right back into the cozy sci-fi.
Yeah, there are two main characters. We have Torian, who is the ex-smuggler who is going out into the universe trying to find a solution to her sister's illness, a place for her to live where she can breathe good air. And the second major character is quite literally Moss. And, Moss, their technical name is Mechanical Operations and Support System, but Moss is quite literally a moss colony, which already, what a character concept.
Love. Mosses, when I was trying to brainstorm which plant to use, I was like, I'm going to have a sentient plant of some kind. It's going to be a computer plant, right? Organic computer. And I Googled like best, like plant that makes the most oxygen. Because my brain was like, well, if it's in space, life support, right? Like it should be the life support system. Like, why aren't we using plants as a life support system? That'd be so cool. And moss is, I don't think it's actually the best creator of oxygen. I need to look this back up again, but I actually think algae does a better job of producing oxygen. But it does pull in the most carbon dioxide and process that. So it like holds the most carbon dioxide. And I was like, well, that's perfect for humans because, we breathe out, then we inhale the oxygen. So it does both. And there's so many kinds of it. And then they found out it can live in space. And that happened after I wrote this book. And I was like, I knew it. Like, it's just so cool. Moss is so neat.
Moss as a character is so cool. They are like very dryly sarcastic and funny as hell, but also like you go from like laughing to being like heartbroken over the moss, because this moss is not just any moss, it's not just a life support system, it's also moss that has severely strong abandonment issues.
Yes.
Why would you do this?
I I needed a reason to put these two characters together, right? Because they're both from vastly different backgrounds. Like Moss was created by this immortal alien, and I imagine that they were like two peas in a pod for a really long time, like for a really long time, like 1,000 years. They're just vibing together on this spaceship, hanging out, chatting, right? Like initially that alien did not intend to have Moss become sentient, but as he hooked it up to more like intelligent systems, the Moss grew in intelligence itself. And this was really fun for me because like there is a bit of a commentary in this book about AI and how you can comprehend like what is true intelligence over a creature that has never been alive, right? Like that has never been sentient before. So I think that if you look at like how I wrote this book, there's a difference between something like auto navigation, who is pulling experiences from Moss's experience, and something like Moss, who was given technology to communicate, but was alive before. Like Moss is a real thing that exists in the world and is alive. Like it functions in the same way that humans do, just with like slightly different communication styles and like living styles, right? So I really wanted to kind of like pull in the idea of what can be truly sentient and how can that truly come about, because you've got a character that was alive and now is becoming more intelligent, and then you have a character later on that was never alive and literally only becomes sentient-ish because of Moss's experiences, because Moss was already alive. So like I do, and then like it's even more fun because in book two there's another character that AutoNav helps, and that character is again another AI. But you can see how it like dilutes over the course of the chain, right? Like as it gets further away from something that actually was living, it loses that humanity as it moves through. So it becomes like sentient, but like half sentient, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, moss in general, I think that was so off topic, but I thought it was really interesting when I was writing it. I'm like, this is really fun. I think that Moss is a character with those abandonment issues. It needed a reason to latch on to Torian in a very strong way, right? Like I needed a really solid reason why Torian was its ride or die. Because like why else would it care about Torian if it had not already lost everything that it had once and didn't think that it would ever find that again? You know, like you have to imagine how this character feels being trapped in a hangar, watching human after human come in and see this moss infestation on its ship, and that is Moss itself. And Moss is just like, why am I not good enough for any of these creatures? Like, why am I not good enough for these stupid humans? You know, like I am awesome. I am awesome. Like, why am I not
Oh my,
great? Right? Like, you know,
I am awesome.
I
That's
am awesome.
amazing.
I feel like Moss would say that. So I think, and I think that you know what really makes it special with that bond initially is like I didn't want like insta love, right? Like there's no romance between the boss and Torian, but I didn't want insta love where it's like they're best friends right away without a reason for them being best friends right away. And that reason is Torian's slower to trust, but Moss is like, no, you're my human now because it needs something like that. Like it needs a human or a person to be its person, and then it just like holds on to her, and then over time that becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's just fun to watch it kind of grow because it starts very attached, and then over the course of the three books it's going to learn how to be independent on its own, right? Like it will have these friendships no matter what, but it will learn through those friendships how to be more independent, and that I think is a really fun thing to watch.
You can already kind of see Moss like learning and progressing through these stages towards the end of the book. You already mentioned that there is a character, auto navigation, that uh, through some tinkering is slowly becoming more and more sentient, which I thought I had a favorite character, and then I met auto nav and I went, no, I'll ride or die for auto nav. That's my
I
kid now.
I can't wait for you guys to meet Pete in book two because like Pete is gonna just come out of nowhere and like smack you guys in the face.
I'm very excited. It's also interesting because Moss has abandonment issues, and like that's a big part of their character arc is like resolving or like working through these issues and like coming to terms with what happened and figuring out whether it wants to forgive their old friend for what happened or how it wants to progress. Um, but it, there are several characters in this book that you don't realize it at first, but then you like look at it a little closer as time goes on, and you're like, oh no, this is an ongoing issue, and they're just holding up mirrors to each other. And by one person kind of, or one being learning to process what has happened and learning how to heal from it, they are now able to help others heal from the trauma that they've been dealt. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's really it's very good.
Yeah, the a big theme in my Tomes and Tea series is kind of showing relationships as they're developing rather than just like the insta love and then they live happily ever after. Like I really wanted in the Tomes and Tea quartet to show how a relationship can develop over time where you're choosing your partner every day and you're using more of those therapy techniques to like really resolve conflict before it becomes a problem. And I think that I wanted to pull some of that in, but with a character like Moss, it doesn't know any of that. Like it has like systems where it can be like, oh yes, of course, I logically know that this is how you're supposed to handle conflict, but it also doesn't really understand the feelings that it's feeling because Moss didn't have those feelings before. Like before it became sentient with all of the computers and it started grabbing input from all of these different sources, it didn't know what sadness was. It only really knew what like fear was because there wasn't enough water, or like pain was because there's too much sunshine, right? You know, or like too hot, right? Like it knows what plants know, but it doesn't necessarily know what humans know. And I think that watching it kind of grow into that sentient being and then yeah, using that experience to teach something like auto nav, it was genuinely like so fun. Like Moss is one of my favorite characters to write. I actually every time I get to go back to Moss, I feel like I'm going home. It's so fun.
Moss and Torian are not the only characters that end up with the destitute. There are a slew of characters, and I think part of the reason why I would consider this, I mean, besides you calling it cozy sci-fi, the reason why I would consider it cozy is because it has such a strong sense of like the found family trope.
Yep.
As they continue to travel the stars together, they meet a host of different characters. Some of them, there's history there already,
Mhm.
and then others are completely new. And I think that the relationships and bonds that Torian and Moss create with these new characters, I think that is what creates the sense of coziness for me. It's like here are these vastly different people who have different goals and different hopes and dreams, and they're all coming together to work on this one thing. It's you're just like it again, it's that hope. It's that, oh, people can see the best in each other and they can be able to work together successfully to get something up off the ground. That's where I got my coziness. And I loved that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, the found family is a really big thing in cozy. I would argue that it's probably the most unifying trope in cozy books, is like the group of people and how they interact and how they do make you feel like you're welcome home anytime. I think that that's the big goal in cozy. And I also think too, like with this cast, I really wanted to try and I wanted a big cast. Like I wanted like a Firefly-esque cast or like a Mass Effect cast where it's like you have so many different creatures from so many different backgrounds and everybody comes together for one common goal and like they're all and it's varying and it's diverse and it's different, and I think that that was really a cool vibe when you look at a story like Firefly or like Mass Effect. So when I was writing these books, I was aiming for that, but what I didn't realize is how hard it is to have like 8 main characters. Like,
Yeah.
like when I read like books like Six of Crows, they make it sound so easy. Like they may or like Ocean's 11 you watch and it's like, well that yeah, of course they're all super distinct and like I can tell between them all easily. But when you're writing it, that's a lot harder. So in the second book, I had to do a massive rewrite because I initially tried to give every character their own subplot. And I loved that idea because I wanted to flesh them out and make them feel like their own people. But it ultimately became too many subplots. Like it was like 8 subplots, just like all competing for space on the page. And I was losing sight of the original plot as a result. So I do think that this cast helped me learn a lot, as opposed to the Tomes and T series where there's a large cast, but they're all very much secondary characters. Like they're like Keith and Raynor are the main two, and then everybody behind them is kind of behind them. This one, I would say it's probably Torian and Moss, and maybe a little bit Amelia, but there's the characters are all kind of like standing a little closer to the front of the line. So it was interesting. It was a learning curve for me, I think, with this book.
If you were stuck in space waiting for someone to come tow you to the nearest spaceport, which of your characters from Lost in Space would you want to be stuck in a spaceship with for an extended period of time?
Oh, probably Moss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just Moss has access to so many things and like is so interesting and snarky that I feel like I would have a lot of fun being trapped with Moss. But I also do feel like I could keep entertained easily. Like I could be like, well, show me XYZ, right? And it could just like pull up entertainment or information and I could learn how to like better skills. I wouldn't just be sitting around twiddling my thumbs. Like, I don't know. Yeah, Moss, definitely.
Moss is definitely a high contender. I love AutoNav. I don't know if I could spend like a whole afternoon with a mechanical toddler.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like I would want to spend like, time with Nazra. Like I'm
Yeah, Nazra
so
would be fun.
yeah.
Yeah, Nazra would be very cool. Nazra's character, honestly, is my favorite alien in the whole bunch because I feel like the hive mentality, um, like they get into in the second book, like we get into how like they're all streaming from these different planets trying to send back information to the hive of these different areas of the world so that they can like collect their book of knowledge and we end up seeing that like Nazar becomes something of like a social media celebrity in the second book because there's so much happening in her and they call it a hive stream. Her hive stream has like so many things happening in it that there's like a lot of like people from her world just tuning in. And I think that was such a cool idea. Like I loved that idea of like almost channeling the social media vibe. And again, that was one of the subplots that I ended up having to cut in book 2 because I wanted to show like how that kind of perverts someone over
Yeah.
time. But I wasn't able to really dive into it with the duty that it needed. So I had to end up kind of like easing it out a little bit.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But
Mhm.
like I'm actually listening to the audiobook for Lost in Space. I'm like
So good.
it's so good. The narrators are so excellent. But like I'm listening to it and like they say like Nazra is part of the hive mind. She's streaming to everyone else that is part of this hive. And like the word stream is used multiple times and it didn't click until like towards the end and she says, actually, unfortunately, I have one of the lower viewed streams. I'm like, oh my God, she's a streamer.
Yeah,
She's a
she's a streamer.
streamer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I loved that play, I think, on our modern, day technology.
Yeah.
Like I just like, like I imagine like these emissaries, they sound so fancy, so formal, but like you really have to think about how like they would be deciding which ones like because it's a species based on knowledge collection. So the species as a collective decides where the best knowledge is coming from. So they would be tuning into all these different streams from all these emissaries traveling the galaxy, and they would be like, oh, this person's learning a lot of really cool things, but this person is learning some things that I don't know if we all really care that much about, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I do think that that was like a very natural progression for the way that their species is. So yeah, the Tausel are a very cool race, in my
Yes.
opinion.
They're all cool. I'm very excited for people to read Lost in Space. I'm very excited to read the second book in Lost in Space eventually. Before we leave today, is there anything that you would like to let your readers, our listeners know before we close this chapter?
Lost in Space comes out probably already by the time this podcast is out. It will be out most places. You can probably find it in any bookstore because the more people who purchase a cozy sci-fi like Lost in Space, the more publishing gets the memo that cozy sci-fi is a genre that will sell. And that means that they will buy more of them. So there are other authors who are doing what I did and wanting to do what I did, but because they weren't in a position to sell to a big publisher and get this book everywhere, they have not been able to break out with those books, but they're probably really good books, So please go support Lost in Space just for the fact of creating cozy sci-fi as an actual cornerstone genre. I think that we can do some really cool things with it over the next year.
I agree. I am very excited to get my own copy of Lost in Space, another copy, a paid for copy, not the free copy that I got, which I'm keeping both.
Valid. I have the ARC and the actual one upstairs or up higher. So
Yeah. But I listen, you read one book and you're like, yeah, I can get another copy that maybe is prettier and has like a hardcover, but I have memories with this copy. I threw this
yeah.
copy across the room.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have the sacrificial copy and the bookshelf copy. Copy.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right. You have the sacrificial copy and then you have the trophy copy.
Exactly. Yes.
You need both.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today. And with that, it's time for us to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.